Hey friends, it's Laura with Laura B. Floss Tube. Welcome back. I'm so glad you joined me today. We are kicking off our Let's Make a Snowman Lori Holt applique quilt sew along. So I have my design board here and I have our cute little snowman print out. This is the cover page for the cutting guide, and we're gonna get started on piece block number 1. So I just wanna share some little tips and tricks with you on how to get this piece block together efficiently and quickly. There are 22 of those to make, so I'm not gonna do all 22 of them today, but as I go along, I can get a couple done a day and they'll be done lickety split. So the first thing we're gonna do is lay that block out on our design board, and then we'll head on over to the sewing machine. So without further ado, let's lay out this block. Okay, so the cutting guide for Let's Make a Snowman is really cool because it shows you exactly how to lay out each one of the 22 piece blocks. And so if you have the kit like I did, then you'll have the fabrics and all of that all ready to match up for each one of these blocks. If you're using your scraps or if you're using your stash, then you're going to have to kind of translate what you cut to each of these blocks. So the first thing I like to do, just to make it easier on myself and to make sure I don't get confused, is I like to lay out the block on a design board so I can see how it's going to work before I even get to the sewing machine. So I'm just going to lay this block out following the cutting guide. It's actually a block guide, I guess, but so all of these will just go where they're supposed to. And you might be wondering, why in the world would you do this? Well, because I am anglly challenged, and sometimes if I don't do this, then I get my blocks all messed up. And it doesn't really help to have to undo all of your blocks all the time. So I'm just continuing to follow the guide and laying out these pieces. And now there's rectangles and squares out of this same fabric. And if you really, really, really want your block to look the exact same way, then you need to make sure your rectangles are going the same way. That may not matter so much to you. I mean, it kind of matters to me, but not to the point where I'm gonna really stress about it. If something gets turned, it's still gonna look the same, so it doesn't matter. We are gonna sew a square, and then we're gonna do easy corner triangles with these little blocks. And so I'm just gonna kind of set those to the side for now. These are easy corner triangles as well for the centers. So I'm going to set those to the side as well. The first thing I'm going to do are sew these squares together. I'll put them back on the design board, line up where my easy corner triangles go, and then we will put this block together. Let's head over to the sewing machine. So if you haven't watched my videos before, let me tell you a couple things about me. 1, I'm not a big pinner. 2, I'm a huge chain piecer. So when I look at this block, I think about how can I break it down and make this faster and quicker and easier on my brain. The first thing I'm going to do when I look at this block is I'm going to sew together these squares that are separate from these rectangles. And then after that, I'll take them back and I'll sew them to the rectangles, and then we'll do our easy corner triangles. We're gonna break this block down and get it done quick. All right, I'm trying to position the camera where you can see my design board and my sewing machine. I'm just doing a straight stitch here, you guys, so you don't really need to see the sewing machine that much. So just bear with me a little bit. I am using a Juki DX7. I have it on a straight stitch. I have my stitch set down to 2.0. And I am just grabbing all of the squares that need to be sewn together off the design board that's sitting beside me. Whoops, that was a rectangle. Now I'm going to cut the first 3 off, but not all 4, because I don't want to have to cut my thread and have a chance of undoing my needle. And then I'm going to put these back on the design board where they came from. Now, when I'm sewing the squares to the rectangle, I'm going to flip my seam. I'm going to go to the dark. I'm not pressing yet, but I'm just flipping that seam to the dark square. Now before I do the next step, I'm also going to go ahead and attach these little guys together. Now I am going to go ahead and press these open because I need to do those easy corner triangles. So I want to make sure that these are nice and flat. Now just so I don't confuse myself, I am going to go ahead and put these back on the design board where they belong. And I just need to decide, do I want to do my corners, do I want to do my centers, or my outer corners first? And I'm going to do the centers first. So I'm going to grab all 4 of the, I think it's like the songbook fabric. I'm not really sure. I should look that up. It says Away in the Manger all over it. Now, another thing that I have done on my machine is I have 2 pieces of washi tape, and that's kind of like a seam guide. So if you have like seam guide tape, this is going to be your friend right now. Just keep track of which corner you are putting this fabric on. It does go on the middle corner, so that's where you should be lining it up. I'm going to cut all but one off. I'm going to go ahead and press these open, put them back. You can definitely take this to your cutting mat and make sure you have an exact 1/4 inch seam. I just know that if it's close enough, it's going to be fine, because that triangle is going to flip back, and I'm going to put my other 2 squares on there, and it's going to be happy, happy. Okay, once again, I'm going to put these on here to make sure I know where everybody goes. And guess what? I did this one wrong. That should have gone like this. So, this is when you get to see the seam ripper come out. Don't be freaking out on me though. It's going to be okay, I promise. And of course I already cut it, but it's an easy corner triangle. So all I have to do, I'm going to press this out and line this up this way, right across the corner. And so right on the line that I sewed on before, and I can see it because it's got the stitching in it. All right, so let's just start with this one first. So now we need all of our little, I don't know if they're mistletoe or berry or whatever it is. And we are going to just cover this corner, line it up as best we can, and sewing across the corner. All right, and we're gonna grab the other 3 and do the same thing. Now, if I was using the same fabric for all 3 corners, I wouldn't have even cared. But that fabric is supposed to be in the center. Now, I don't have to cut these off or do anything with them yet, because it's going on the opposite corner, so I can just go ahead and sew on the other square. All right, so again, you can take it to your cutting mat and rotary cut those off, or you can just use your scissors and cut them off. Now, for those of you that really like to save your scraps, you could definitely sew another seam and make some half square triangles out of these. I am not gonna do that. Take them to the ironing board, press them out, put them back on the design board, and put it all together. All right, so at this point, we basically just have a 9-patch block. So we're gonna grab the first corner and the middle section for the first row, and we're gonna sew those together. Grab that first section we put together. And now can you see why I broke the block down the way I did? Because it gave me a 9-patch block to put together, and I can actually use a chain piecing or a webbing technique to put this block together and not have to cut so many threads. So here's my first row, first and second block. I'll flip the third piece over on top of it. Middle row. Now I'm going to cut everything off of there. Now this is always a good idea to just open your block and make sure everybody is where they're supposed to be and lined up the way they're supposed to be. So now we're just going to flip the first 2 rows together and we're going to stitch them together, making sure we line up this middle seam. And by that, we're just going to nest those. I keep my finger there as I'm sewing along. I'm going to stop right at that nested seam, and I'm going to grab the other part of that row, line up the edges, line up that middle and nest it again. When I say I'm nesting my seams, I'm basically just at those little junctures, I am taking the seams and flipping one way and one the other. So they literally just nest on top of one another, kind of lock into place. Now I like adding my rows to the underneath side because then I know which way the seams should be lying without twisting them. So I know that the first 2 I put together, which way I nested those seams, and that way the second piece that goes on won't twist the seam on me. I'm gonna flip that little guy. And there we have it. So we'll press this block out and have a reveal. So this is the first of 22 piece blocks and Let's Make a Snowman. This is our first week in our sew along. All the weeks from here on out are going to be all about applique till we get to those borders. So if you have these piece blocks done, you are way ahead of me. If you're just starting out, then we have some piece blocks to make, don't we? And I plan on making a couple a week as I go along. If I have some time, I might just sit down and crank them all out, but I'll just get them done at my leisure because I really don't need them until the very end when we're assembling that borders. Okay, so a little bonus tip for you. I was just thinking after I was taking a picture with this, just so you know, organization tip. When I get this piece block done, as it is now, what I will be doing is I'm going to take this label and just pin it right to the block, and I'll put it back in that project tote, or I might stick it up on the design wall, but I definitely keep this label on the block because that way later on when I'm putting my borders together, I know which block is which. So that's a little tip for you, just in case you're not sure how to organize your pieced blocks. Next week, we're going to start tackling those applique blocks. We'll be doing the hat, the branches, the poinsettia, and the snowman word. I definitely have some tips to help you with those letters, so tune in for that. Leave me a comment down below and let me know where you're at with this sew along. Have you already gotten it done? Are you starting with me? Are you going to start 2 years from now? All of those things are perfectly fine. You've got to find time for you when it works for your schedule. Until next time, I hope you're finding joy in all you do. Carve out some time for crafting and creating, and make sure it's always happy stitching.